And here's something new. More than 70% of anti-Trump protesters arrested in Portland, Oregon last week did not vote in the state of Oregon. KGTV dug into state election records, and good for them, and found that at least 79 of the 112 people taken into custody during those demonstrations were either not registered to vote in Oregon or did not cast a ballot there in the 2016 election. The Portland protest spanned 5 nights and devolved into violent riots that caused more than $1 million worth of property damage and scared the hell out of everybody. Well, here now with his thoughts on that is Fox News roaming correspondent, a man who has roamed far and wide across the fruited plain, our friend Geraldo Rivera. So, Geraldo, are you I got to say, I'm probably less appalled by this in New York because I think you've got a right to protest even if you don't vote, but you disagree.
Well, first of all, I hope that our interview goes as smooth as your interview with Dr. Emanuel that preceded this.
You can't blame the Republicans for a law they didn't have anything to do with. I'm sorry.
True.
I'm sorry.
And I also have to say congratulations on the big hit show here, and I love your confirmation haircut. You know, it's really working for you.
That's me, but I appreciate it.
Listen, I don't, like you, I believe that I have nothing against protests per se unless you inconvenience innocent people grievously or break other people's stuff. I was a renowned or notorious protester, however you want to characterize it, 1968, 1969, 1970, civil rights, anti-war. So there is a perfectly American tradition of nonviolent protest. What happened in Oregon, though, was despicable. It was thuggery. It was people who not only didn't vote, some of them probably voted for Jill Stein or Gary Johnson, just as bad or almost as bad. Not only that, they were, ironically, the bitter irony, they were breaking stuff in a city and in a state that went overwhelmingly for Hillary Clinton and against Donald Trump. So they had no logic to what they did. I think there are protesters with a specific beef in this country, Tucker, and you and I could have this discussion anytime you want. I think that these DREAM Act students who now are threatened with deportation, even after President Obama gave them a deferral from deportation, I think that those kids have a right to protest because they are living in abject terror now that their lives are going to be disrupted. But protesters who don't vote or break
just to be totally clear, you'll concede that the president's order was illegal, A, and B, they're not citizens. So it's a little weird. Like if I showed up and pick a country in Latin America and said, I'm staying here and I'm going to take taxpayer subsidized services, and if you don't like it, I'm going to throw a rock through the window of Starbucks. People would say that's kind of unreasonable, actually, because you're not really supposed to be here in the first place.
I have seen no ruling that the initial 700,000 young people who were brought here as children by their parents through no fault of their own and have lived law-abiding lives here in the United States. I've seen no ruling that that was either unconstitutional or illegal. There is a stay on the expansion of the program to their parents by one federal court judge in Texas that has been affirmed by the United States Supreme Court, but it has to be litigated. But what about these kids, though? Think humanistically about these children now.
Well, I feel for every one of them.
They're going back to a country they've never seen, at least in their conscious memory.
I get it, but here's my macro problem with this. The real concern of American politicians ought to be American citizens. That's who they're elected to watch out for. And yet on the left, their main concern seems to be people who are not here legally. So it's like, where are your sympathies? I mean, there are American citizens whose lives are affected negatively.
Impact the lives of citizens negatively. That's not the way I see it. The vast majority of the people who voted for Donald Trump live in areas where undocumented immigrants do not reside. Most of them have never had any kind of interaction with an undocumented immigrant, and certainly not these children. These are students.
Let's be reasonable. I'm not against the children, and I feel for them.
These are American kids in every way, shape, or form, Tucker.
But let's be totally real.
Except the fact of the accident of their birth.
If all of a sudden your kid's school finds itself flooded with people who don't speak the language, doesn't mean they're bad people. They can be great people. They probably are great people. But it's a massive drain on resources. And all of a sudden, they're canceling gym and music. And your kid's experience becomes less good necessarily because there's a limited pool of resources. So, to say that there's no consequence of this is just wrong. It's silly.
This is the town I was born in. I was born on this island, Manhattan Island. There are 500,000 undocumented immigrants in the 5 boroughs of the city. You never hear about them. You never hear about them. Why? Because they
our
don't
children
commit
don't go to
these
school with their
flamboyant
children. That's
crimes.
why.
They are people that mind their business. They work hard. They deliver pizza at 2 o'clock in the morning on a February, in the wind blowing up your pants. I mean, I think that you have to have a balanced. I like Donald Trump. I've known him forever. I wish him every success in the world. But I think now is the time for him to reassure people these aren't the people that he's talking about when he's building his wall or he has his deportation force.
Okay,
These are kids.
But what about, why do you think that Trump got the overwhelming majority of working class voters? Because they're the ones whose lives are affected by the presence of
gin up the
massive
fears.
immigration.
People like Stephen King in Iowa, starting right at the get-go of the presidential race, they make these people into boogeymen that the voter can put all their fears and all their loathing on these people as scapegoats.
I'm sorry. I'm calling PC on you. No more boogeymen, boogie people. We're out of time, unfortunately. It was great to see you. Roman,
You too.
Geraldo.
Good luck, man. Good luck.
Thanks.
I'm a big fan.
I appreciate it.